And I just want to welcome everyone. I'm Jenny Collins, a team member of the Youth Mental Health Project and the director of the Parent Support Network. Our mission at the Youth Mental Health Project is to educate, empower, and support families and communities to better understand and care for the mental health of our youth. As most of you know, we are following Jesse Cody on his hike on the Pacific Crest Trail this summer. As a result of knowing Jesse, we met Emily Vacunas, the co-founder of Hiker Hunger, and she introduced us to the Strawbridge family. On June 21st, parents who are with us, Vince and Monica, along with their kids, Georgie, 14, Henry, 16, June 17, Aiden, 19, became the largest family ever to complete the Triple Crown of hiking, trekking and completing the links of the Pacific Crest Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, and the Appalachian Trail. This family does not have any diagnosed mental illnesses. However, as we all know, we all have mental health. And when we thought about why we would have a webinar with a family that doesn't struggle with their mental health, we thought about their journey and hiking the Triple Crown with their kids. In 2018, they hiked the Pacific Crest Trail southbound from the Canadian border through to the Mexican border, about 2,600 miles. In 2020, they hiked the Continental Divide Trail, about 3,100 miles. And in March 2021, this year, they embarked on the Appalachian Trail, finishing at Mount Katahdin, a total of 2,200 miles. That is a lot of hiking, a lot of togetherness, and it requires physical and mental stamina. Tonight, we're going to discuss how venturing into the wilderness improved their mental health and happiness. Welcome, Vince and Monica. I'm so excited to have you here tonight.
Thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here.
We're really excited. You're like rock stars in my mind. So I just am like totally in awe of what you've accomplished, and especially with all of you going together. It's just an amazing feat. And why did you decide to do this? What was your, like, from just hiking in general to then tackling all three? Or what motivated you?
Monica?
I was going to say Vince. Go ahead. Go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. The in a nutshell version is probably that Monica loves hiking, loves walking. We ran into some difficulty in the 2008 housing market crash that set us back quite a bit and sort of pushed us in a direction of doing camping as a family, backpacking as a family with some family friends, because it was an inexpensive way to spend time for the most part. And then somewhere along the way, we took the kids on a loop hike. Instead of base camping and hiking out of there, we did a long loop hike, and they were just stronger each day. And so I just kind of looked at Monica and said, what do you think if we took them on a through hike with us? Now, we had gone out to the Sierra Nevada and done a loop hike out there with some cousins, a cousin of mine and her husband. Monica and I had together, and when we were out there, we said we need to bring the kids back. And so when I pitched the idea of a through hike tour, there were certainly a lot of complications still out in front of us, and potential that it wouldn't be able to make it happen. But as we were deciding, we sort of thought, well, shoot, if we're going to take them on one, let's take them on the big one. And so we talked about doing the Pacific Crest Trail. And then we came home and talked to my oldest daughter, Aiden, talked to her principal. Aiden was at that point in an international baccalaureate program, a 4-year consecutive high school program, and talked to the principal. And she said, absolutely, this is what education is all about. Go do it. And we'll let her back into the program. So we essentially dropped her out of school for a year and then took off with the rest of them. The rest of them were easy because we were homeschooled with the other three. So.
Which doesn't mean we didn't do school that year. Just means we traded the months out for when we were off.
Yeah.
Wait, say that again?
So that doesn't mean we didn't do any school that year. We just switched the months around so we could hike.
But it did affect when we went though. The school, we started we opted to do these trails. I don't know, of your viewers, I don't know how many of them are hikers. I probably wouldn't know this unless I'd done these things, but the trails are more typically walked northbound. So they typically people start on the southern end of each of these trails. So they started at the border of Mexico and Canada on the Mexico and the United States on the southern end of the Pacific Crest Trail and walk north through to Washington, where it meets the Canadian border. And we opted to walk south instead of walking north because of the school calendar.
Okay. So what were you trying, what were you aiming for? What were you aiming to get through the summer, or you were starting later, or how were you?
We needed to start after my daughter finished her sophomore year? I think it was her sophomore year.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
High school. So we just needed to wait till she was out that year.
Yeah. And the southbound sets up really nice. The southbound hikes set up really nicely for that. And you don't, because we always knew we were going to come back late for the fall start, but we didn't know how late. One nice thing is that the southern direction push you a little faster, make you go a little faster, and because you got to beat the winter in sort of significant mountain range zones. And so southbound hikes tend to go a little faster. We were finished by end of November. So we essentially pushed one semester out to the back side of it. And our oldest, Aiden, did some online courses when we came back and just put school off until the following fall.
Okay. All right.
Well, I would say, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Monica, go ahead.
I would say too that our motivation was, I think we were pretty aware of how short of a time we had our kids, before they were gone. And so I think we were motivated to kind of really spend a lot of time with them. And I think we liked the idea of a big journey, and felt a little like a big adventure. So yeah.
Well, how did you prepare both physically and mentally, for all of them? Or were they different? Was it preparation different, or?
We prepared for the first one. We just walked. I mean, of course, now we were walking in Florida, which has no hills at all. So we couldn't really prepare for the hills, but we just kind of got enough hours, we thought, on our feet. So we just kind of would do long walks. We kind of thought about it like training for a marathon. You start a little bit and you build up as you go. But we walked with our backpacks like every weekend for a while before, but we weren't. I mean, I think figured out toward the end that you can't really prepare that much. I mean, you can do like strength exercises like for your core and your back and that kind of stuff, but nothing's going to prepare you for walking all day long.
Well, I would say though that we did push miles a little bit more than we had before, because we did that trip to South Carolina, the Foothills Trail, and we did a Florida Trail hike, and the furthest we'd ever walked before in a day may have been 14 miles, but on those two trips we topped 19 and 20 miles, and so we did get a sense that we could do it. And I would say in terms of the mental preparation for it, it just kind of came with the efforts at the physical. Like we sort of launched into the physical preparation and did 2 longer hikes and had to go walk every day and had to do a long walk on the weekend. And so all of the mental barriers, we walked long enough to get to these sort of challenges that would sort of hit you along the way. For the kids, I think maybe the biggest mental challenge that they did nothing to prepare for, and we didn't really do anything to prepare them for either, would be that sort of fear of missing out on what was happening at home. And so I would say being homesick was their biggest challenge on the trail, and we didn't really do anything to prepare for it. Not having a sense of what to anticipate, we didn't prepare for it. I think we probably got pretty lucky with that, and I mean, like, it was completely fortuitous, but friends would kind of schedule to come at convenient times, and so they would kind of, somebody would show up at 300 miles, then we'd see family at 500 miles. And then it just was a nice, home came to us at good times
Right.
to see it.
Yeah, we had a lot of visitors, which was super great for the kids, super great I mean, for everybody, but yeah, it really helped the kids not feel so, like we're out in the middle of nowhere with our parents and we're miserable.
Well, did you feel that, what was some of your strategies that you used to communicate with each other so that you could know what was going on, how people were feeling? Did you have any strategies that you used?
Well, I feel like this was a strategy. It didn't come out probably very well. I didn't communicate it very well. I really wanted us to sit down to lunch together, kind of like family dinner would be, where we sit around, we talk, we check in, see how everybody's doing. Because it's hard to talk or check in with people when you're walking on a skinny trail behind them, it's just, you can't see their face. It's just a little bit, and then in a group, it doesn't work at all because you can't hear the person at the front, and like it's hard. So I really wanted to make sure we sat down and just could see each other and check in, and I feel like that was a strategy of mine, like a priority of mine, to make sure we were communicating and knowing how each other were doing. So that was one for me.
Yeah, I would say for me, the one that was unique, at least related to the trail, would be that there's some freedom of time that you have, a freedom of space and distance and privacy. And so June and I in particular would lift the rules of being quiet in our expression of our feeling. And so I would invite her, if she was mad, to like scream it, and we would be loud. And if she was angry, she could say it angry. If she was happy, she could say it happy. And so there was some freedoms that came with that, and some freedoms in terms of letting people stay in, not having to fix things very quickly. You could let things sort of simmer and sort themselves out a little better in that kind of environment with that kind of intense time together, without the threat of interruption. So
That's very interesting. You didn't have to worry about, you could just, instead of feeling like you had to solve the problem right away, you could give it some time to solve itself. That's very interesting. You had all that.
And the walking, I think the walking helps you process that stuff, I mean, just your thought, at least it does for me. And I've heard Henry say that he thinks it does for him too. Just you get to, I mean, just with sitting with a hard conversation that you have, or a hard, difficult mood that you're in, or whatever, because you have all of that. Just the walking helps you process it, I think, and just kind of work it out. And I'm sure endorphins help all of that too, but
yeah. Well, did you feel that, I'm sure everybody gets, moody or whatever, different moods you have to juggle. How did you learn how to manage each other's moods, and what helped you through the bad days, if there were bad days?
There were bad days. Just go ahead and get that out there. So your question is, how did we help each other through those days?
Yeah, or how did you manage each other if you knew that somebody was particularly, either way, either help each other or manage it? Because sometimes, well, as Vincent, he was able to let her scream it out, that's one way. She had, you didn't have people around, you had privacy, you had space.
I mean, as far as managing, I think sometimes we would take, like, listen to music breaks and be by yourself, walk by yourself for a while, still in view, close enough that we're not wondering where you are, but, work it out, give you some space. What do you think, Vince?
I think what you think.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Did you ever have, was there just one day in particular for each of you that you felt like, just can't go on, or how did you cope with that? Do you feel like there was?
Mhm.
I did. I do think so. I can think of particular days. I would. I was sort of joking on the last one, but I do think that there was some sense of when people, like, each of my kids is motivated differently. Each of them respond to situations differently. They each have strengths, and so you definitely dealt differently with each of them, in terms of when they got down, and their particular, their hardships and their peculiarities were difficult on the group for their own different reasons. And so I think we just had to take one at a time and learn about it. And really, when you do something that moves you into extremes like that, that experience does, where it takes you to tired in ways you haven't before, where it takes you to hungry in ways you haven't before, where it sort of kicks up levels of irritability even higher. You really learn a lot about people. I would think, by way of example, I would say that Monica had plantar fasciitis for a significant portion of walking, and at in the morning it would be very hard, and then she would walk into a comfortable pace, and then we were limiting our miles at that point, and we'd be approaching the limitation of the miles, and she would say, I think I could go a little further today, maybe 26 miles or something, maybe we can do 26 today. And then we would hit 19 and a half miles and everything would change on a dime. And it was, just the pain level shot up, and she was done, and we were all done. But that kind of thing is sort of happening all the time with 6 different people, where they are each and all of us moving in and out of, I don't know what you would call it, ranges of tolerance and comfort with
windows of tolerance.
Windows of tolerance, that's the one. And you really have to be careful about engaging with each other, and some of us more than others, and some of us more times than others, but we all sort of had our moments where we were melting down. And so you have this sense of, not only in a physical sense that you're only as fast as your slowest, but you're also only as emotionally ready to take on a challenge as the weakest at that moment, right? And so there's a sense in which you really are working together and all trying to work each other toward a goal. Others of us some have different goals than others, but that's the reason I decided to say something about that anyway, is because I would say one of the worst days was for me, and it's sort of encapsulated in a moment, was we woke up in the snow, and it was there was a terrible windstorm, which is appropriate to now with all the storms going on. But there was a terrible windstorm. Trees were laying not just across the trail, but intertwined, and we were climbing 10 to 15 feet off the ground, and we made about 4 miles in 8 hours or something the day before. And so but then it started snowing as soon as we're the other side of these terrible trees. And we decided to hike up, we were going to hike up over a pass and do an alternate route. And so we woke up in the highest elevation of trees, just below the timberline there, and woke up in about 6 to 8 inches of snow, and it was very cold. We just had thunder here.
Yeah.
If we lose you, I'm so sorry. We had so we got to the tree line, or we woke up in the tree line, and before everybody left the tent, I said, guys, we all need to work together and go. Nobody can go slow. We can't afford to get cold, because it was really very, very cold. And so we started out, and we were walking up switchbacks into a whiteout at the top of a pass, across a pass, and the winds were pretty significant, but they were not, gusting to 20, 25, something like that, which doesn't mean they're going to be that low at the top of the pass. But we started up these switchbacks, and my sort of directive had been, we all have to stay together. And we didn't. Like, we started to separate. I looked back down, and Monica and June and Aiden were down there, and June was laying in the snow and refusing to go. And so it was just this terrible moment where you think, we have to make her go, because people's safety is at stake and at risk. And so all the books I'd read about hostage negotiation and making people do what they wanted to do wanted them to do right at the moment didn't help. Like I needed to have her go. So I went back down and I sent them ahead. And I halted the faster people. Henry and Georgie and our cousin were up there, and they were standing still in very cold weather. And we only carry the clothes we need. We don't carry extra. They were like, it was a severe sort of situation. So I went back down the switchbacks and sent them on, which, for me, this led to pretty significant discomfort. Now I'm sending them up. I want to be a part of the navigation,
Because
going over
yeah,
the top of a windswept pass that doesn't have a clear
yeah.
trail. But I can't be now. I'm in the back with June, and it was so hard to go so slow with her and to have her not. I think I was so frustrated because it was. This is a moment when you have to rise to the occasion. You understand the severity and you won't do it. And I just remember being so angry and so frustrated. And we got to the top, and I was really scared for them because I didn't see any footprints, didn't see anything like that. June and I had a difficulty finding the trail over the top. We got all over the top and started to walk down, and then started to see their footprints. So I was okay knowing that they were okay. And about 3 or 4 miles later, we caught up to them, and they were all standing in the trees in a huddle crying because it was so cold. And we had to make a decision at that point to go back into the wilderness or to walk down and out to a trailhead. But the trailhead, we didn't know if there would be anybody there because it was severe and bad weather. And we ended up choosing to go down to the trailhead. And there were these 2 guys that had met the kids. They got there before us. They had met the kids and said, "Hey, if you guys need a ride to town, we'll give you a ride," which was so cool. But I remember that. That's not a whole day, but that's just a microcosm of a very difficult
That sounds
moment in a very difficult day. And that probably is really where it is the hardest. And I would imagine that any parent who is dealing with a child with mental health challenges has that feeling of, it's all right. Like it's not that you're not filled with love for this child and want to be helpful to this child and want to do what you can for that child, but there's this moment where you're thinking, but it's costly. Like there's a heavy risk and cost associated with this moment, and I need you to do more than you're willing to do. And it was just, I remember it being, that was very hard, and in some ways that was very indicative of a lot of that experience in that trip. But it was especially hard that day for me. Probably not my hardest day, but it was a hard moment in a day.
Which trail was that, just out of curiosity?
That was on the Continental Divide Trail. So last year in September 9th, Colorado had its earliest ever winter storm. It was a record winter storm. And it just, they had wind events all over the Rocky Mountains there that just ripped trees up and just leveled acres and acres of trees. So.
Wow. That's a really good analogy about struggling with mental health. Really good. And I bet you had many days that were challenging, but that would be really, really hard. I was going to ask you, so how did school work? You said before, Monica, that you were homeschooling 3 out of the 4?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. The 3.
So how did it go for you during the 3 different trips that you made?
Well, the first one, we didn't know we were going to do 3. We started just thinking we were going to do 1. So the first one, we didn't do any school on the trail at all, or even try. We just, we listened to books together and that kind of stuff, but no formal school. And yeah. And then we came back and just kind of did the year 3 months late. And so we schooled into the summer through the next summer, and then started the next year in the fall. The second, then when we were going to do the second 2, or the second and the third, it was tough. I mean, I was trying to figure out, it was going to delay things for them and put things off till later. And it was a tough decision. But what we were able to do on the trail were some history, listening to some history things together. And we did a lot of like discussing questions after the fact, after listening together. We did some literature that way as well, listening to the same books and discussing them. But there wasn't, I mean, there was no math really on the trail. We just had to wait until, you know, we could do it.
Other than trail math.
Other than how many liters, how many miles do I have to go? And I only have this many liters of water.
Right, there you go. That's good. That's good math.
It is, no, very practical, but yeah, not exactly algebra 2 or anything like that.
That's okay.
That's okay. Yeah. So we just kind of had to, you know, this year we're back at home, we're doing school again, and we're getting through high school credits, and it's a lot. I mean, we have some stuff we need to, you know, one of my daughters is taking 2 sciences, right? Or, you know, a biology and a chemistry because she didn't do biology in the right year. So, I mean, that's kind of the beauty of homeschool is that you can get your credits, you know, and then, you know, just finish the requirements kind of on your own timetable. But it's challenging. I mean, it's challenging now to do all the work that we didn't do while we were gone, but they're doing great. I mean,
Great.
There was a book that I read about, I can't remember, it's like Moonwalking with Einstein. It was about building memory palaces and like using like unlocking mental memory sort of potentials and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he talks about is using geography for that. Like you would pick your childhood home and like utilize that as a space to begin to place things to remember them. And I just kept thinking as we were walking the trail, this will be so good for the kids. They learned about history walking a trail that was talking about histories that had to do with people who passed over those trails. And so there is a lot of that where they have this sort of geographic space and experience that they're able to attach the things that they learn to. And so I have noticed that they do better with retention of things that they're learning than I remember doing, in particular connected to history and literature and things like that. So,
yeah, some of the history actually worked really well. Some of the U.S. history worked really well with where we were on the CDT, because we were listening about some westward expansion and that kind of stuff. And, you know, we walked on the Oregon Trail on the CDT, and, you know, where, what was I just thinking? South Pass, you know, where Lewis and Clark went, and like South Pass, which was the place they discovered that was so much easier than where Lewis and Clark went. So it was pretty cool to have that place, you know, and you know, we were listening to a book about the Nez Perce, and a particular battle they had with I think it was with the U.S. Army, but
it was, yeah,
we walked right past it. I mean, we walked right past it.
Really?
Yeah,
that's so
I mean,
cool, because that's
cool.
real life experience where most kids read about it. Your kids were actually
I mean, I just remember thinking that was so incredible, like an amazing field trip where you know just get to
really
see it, feel the air that was probably similar, you know, smell the smells that were probably similar. It just was pretty cool.
That's great. And Vince and I talked about this last week when we talked, and I know that you had some guest hikers along the way, and you actually had someone travel the whole Appalachian Trail with you. How did that affect your family dynamic and sort of, you know, this change the structure of your day with your family, or them, you know, did it affect your mental health in any way, or just being different, you know, different than just your kids?
It does for me. Like I like routine. It's comforting for me. Yeah. So it changed up a lot, and it was probably good for me to work through and have to adjust, but it did add a little more noise, I guess I would say, and not just like, you know, mental and audible.
Yeah.
Yeah. it was fun. So yeah, this is a friend of a family that's the family started a trail with us, walked about 105 miles, and then their oldest son, he is an adopted, he's an adopted boy, and he decided on the second day that he wanted to finish the trail with us, the Appalachian Trail. Well, we weren't in any way interested in letting him until two other boys that were going to hike the trail with us decided they wanted to drop out. And so then it became this possibility. And when we invited him, it seemed like a great idea. And hiking does afford you a lot of time and space away. But he had, he had a lot more energy, a lot more outgoing, a lot more outspoken. I didn't realize how quiet we were as a family. We tend to do things in the quiet a lot more, and didn't really notice that until after the trip, when we were driving out to California to finish some miles on the PCT, and the car ride was so quiet. It was like the first time we'd been quiet in 3.5 months. Monica, we would declare 45 minutes of complete quiet at lunch, and it had everything to do with this boy that was walking with us, because he just talked nonstop, and that's just not our style. So it affected our styles, it affected everything. But I would say that was the good part about it, was the hard part about it, right? Everything that was, that tends to be the way of life. The harder things were the good things. And it was my daughter, my youngest daughter, Georgie, loves to keep the peace and loves for everybody to get along all the time. Got really frustrated with this guy, this boy, and she would be so mad at him, and she couldn't figure out how to work her way through being that mad at any human being, and she was stuck with him. And there was nothing she could do about it. So I kept telling her, this is the best thing for you, to have to work your way through this. Like it's okay. You don't even have to like somebody. You just have to love them and treat them well. And so it was an interesting thing to begin to have to work through with her, and especially with her and my daughter June, and in particular. And it added a dynamic that was unfamiliar, and I think in many ways good for us. So,
Yeah,
and we were glad for it. I mean, it was, on his side, sorry, Monica, on his side, it was really cool, because his family had long had this dream of finishing the Appalachian Trail together, and they just, have had acknowledged that they weren't going to be able to pull it off. So in some way, he was accomplishing his mother's dream, and that was really, really neat. And then his dad came and joined us for the finish, and they finished together at Katahdin, and it was really cool.
Yeah, it was really great. It was really great. And for all the loudness, I mean, he brought a lot of life. So yeah, it was good.
Oh yeah.
That's great. That's great. That's so great. I'm going to just read this one little quote. A lot of parents send their children to wilderness programs when their children are struggling with their mental health, and their children change a lot, and usually for the better. And this is just a little quote about wilderness therapy, and I just wanted your opinion about it, if you felt like you saw this in your kids, or you think that it would, rings true, I guess, to you and how your experience. So it says, the natural beauty and the splendor of the great outdoors can provide a sense of calm that promotes peace and a tranquil mind. When the mind is at peace, it is more open and receptive to new ideas and self-reflection. Also in these programs, the child is removed from major distractions like the cell phone and a various number of screens they are faced with day to day. The experience lasts much longer than just the span of the time the child is in the wilderness program. Coping and communication skills become part of the child's continuous awareness, and these skills will help them as they move forward with their lives. This is from secondnature.com. And because we'll have people who will go back and look at this webinar at other times, and a lot of parents contemplate sending their kid on a wilderness therapy program. So I was wondering if any of that rang true for you guys, as far as how it affected your kids, or how have you seen your kids change, or
do you want to go first?
Well, yeah, that's fine. I would say that it does ring true. One of the things that's fun for me to think about, like we're guests on the youth mental health. Like what do we know about it? We don't know a lot about it. We just tell you what we experienced, which I think is kind of a fun way to do it. I do
Great.
think I speak about, like, I speak in conjecture quite a lot, so I may be making all this up, but I do think there's something unique about walking. I do think that some of the stuff Monica was talking about, right brain, left brain, connectedness, and that like helps you work through things slowly. But also watching my kids, I would say that there's a level of patience and care and approach to difficult tasks that is different, that has changed, that's unique. Henry in particular says, when I asked him what he thought had changed, if he had changed, he said, I'm more comfortable taking my time to work my way through something. And so he does. He processes things more slowly and carefully. I think that's probably a result of this experience. So I think I would say that I have seen them each individually change. It is difficult, and to your point, that like it is, I think it's a great thing to what is the I don't know what the I don't even want to say that. Well, I'll say it. I don't even know what it means, but I'm going to say people call, like they say one of the movements in parenting is to be lawnmower parents and cut the way out in front of a kid and say, I'll do it. And I'll not only send you out and, I'll not only protect you from bad things happening, I'll also go out and fight your battles for you. That kind of approach. And in some way, this experience for me puts us in a position where we're working with my kids to overcome problems that we are also having to fear and face. And so we feel vulnerable, they feel vulnerable, and we have to do this thing together. And they become more and more adept to a connection between a risk and reward in very stark ways. Like you can't get that at home. Like, it's all of the old adages from the Great Depression. You don't work, you don't eat. Like, like that kind of stuff. Like the risk and reward connectedness is so apparent in something like this. My kids can whine about not having water, but water's 20 miles over that way. And the experience didn't work. What's that?
Hopefully less than 20 miles if nobody has any water.
Yeah, that's true. You don't want to be out of water. You could be out of water and won't have to walk 5. But I guess what I'm saying is that there's this connectedness between the thing that I want and the thing that I have to do to get it. And the cool thing as a parent or a leader on one of these wilderness experiences with a kid is that you don't have to do the work to create that. The environment and the experience of the outdoors does that, and it reminds you, it sort of shakes you awake and back into a way of thinking about the world that says, oh, I have some responsibility to contribute, and I get to, and I am a part of it, and I'm a part of something bigger. And the other thing that you said that struck me was about the beauty of the outdoors. I think there's something about that too. Wherein it makes you feel smaller but bigger at the same time, which is a really, really, really cool. It's a really cool thing, like to get to be to have both of those things sort of happen simultaneously, right? Like, oh man, I'm tiny. Look at these stars that are like just millions of stars over the top of me, and I'm so small. But I'm so big, like something, I'm big and I'm a part of something that is beautiful. And I think that happens for all of my kids in that. And I can see that, and I can see a level of comfort. I can see an elevated level of comfort with discomfort, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that is definitely true of our kids having gone. And is that they I think they know Vince and I talk sometimes about that miserable point. I mean, and this is more hiking than just being out in nature, but where you get to a miserable point most days, but pushing past it over and over again, and then kind of developing a knowledge that you can do that if you need to, I think has been really good for them. And I don't know that I just see that they have that now. And it's not like they don't complain or anything like that, but they I think there's some definite, I mean, it's toughness, but it's more than toughness. I think there's some, maybe wisdom is the word I'm looking for, in them that I've seen, I think, grow. And part of that, I think, is connected to the beauty that we saw. I mean, I think living outside, waking up with the sun, going to bed with the sun, I mean, your rhythms are kind of more right than
Right.
usual. And yeah, I think there's something kind of what he was saying about, there's some lessons that are just kind of built into the experience of living outdoors. So I think it's great. I mean,
I don't know. See, I would love to ask that. So one of the things that I think is interesting, and I think I don't know how this would tie into this to what you guys do and what you're talking about, but I think there's something. So for me, the child of ours that has the most difficult time making her way in the world is June. She's the quickest to erupt in anger. And it's hard when you're in the day-to-day grind of life to not react, to not be angry, to not say, just why can't she get in line and get it together? But being out there for months with her has given me a much better sense of what's it given? I guess for her, it's given her a greater assurance that I'm not going anywhere. I don't know, maybe that I'm not going anywhere, that she can erupt and we're going to get to the other side of it. And it's just given me opportunity to work through that with her over and over and over and over again. And I think in coming home, it doesn't change the fact that it's difficult. It just changes a level of comfort within that experience. And I think this experience gave that to us. I think having lived that outside together, that hardship together, pushed through that together, gives us a little bit extra as we try to do it back here.
Yeah.
I would say.
Well, we actually have 2 questions from our Q&A, and I want to remind people they can certainly ask questions, but you may have answered this already, but you just were talking about June and specifically, but how did you motivate the kids when they were having a rough day? Like how did you find that they ended up motivating themselves, or, was there anything that you feel like this was an anonymous attendee is asked a question.
There you go. Well, the Slurpee technique works, except in this case, it's hamburgers and ice cream. Or when we were in the Sierra, it was Chinese food and Bishop, and those things work. Bribery is not a bad motivator.
Look forward to town food, but didn't always work. It didn't always work.
There's bribery and there's necessity and there's all of those things as well. But they are, like I said earlier, they are motivated by different things. So Henry would get bored, and so we can motivate him into a challenge. We didn't do a lot of things. Part of the reason we need to go on these things for 4 months, and your viewers could go for 2 weeks and accomplish this. We're not very proactive and plan, but like, Henry's motivated by a challenge. So if you said, hey, we're going to try to make 29 miles today, he would get excited about that. If you'd say, I bet you can't cowboy camp tonight, he would get excited about that, and he would sleep out on a windy ridge and, and prove to you that he could do it. June is, they're just all motivated differently. And so you sort of attend to each of their the things that motivate each of them. And then after a while, they for us at least were dialed into the grander attempt, which was we want to get to Mexico. And so that sort of did hang out there for them as well. But friends and family were a huge motivation. I can't wait to get to see so and so at such and such. That was always a big motivator. So counting down days to get to the cousins, or get to my dad or mom, or get to, those were big motivating factors. Can you think of any other things, Monica?
The people definitely were huge. I mean, I think this isn't a great, but sometimes I just, said, well, put on some music and try to just walk. I mean, I'm not a grand motivator at all. I kind of just power through on my own with myself. That's the way I motivate myself. But I don't know. I think the people were big. I think looking forward to eating was big. It's a trail thing. You just food becomes your number one love on the trail. Or, sometimes I would give them my Snickers bars.
There you go. Yeah, I'll give you my Snickers bars. Yeah.
Just to
that's a big sacrifice. That's a sacrifice. Wow. Good for you.
Well, I mean, they liked them so much better than I, they really, really liked them. And it would be like they were having a bad day and I was giving them all I could to help. So it's funny because I generally, I'm always like, we need to eat healthy. And out there, I'm like, here's my Snickers bar. But anyway.
I'm thinking of, I haven't thought about this in a long time, but I wasn't joking when I said I was reading hostage negotiation books, and I'd studying these techniques of motivating kids if I could possibly do it. And so that was kind of before the trip. And so,
but you didn't do it for that reason, did you?
I don't. Let's see.
Were you just reading the book?
I can't remember. Maybe I'm taking too much. Yeah, I'm probably taking too much credit. It probably was more fortuitous than anything. That's probably very true. But I was excited to have read it once I got out there. But one night, June fell, and Monica moved to help her, and June reacted very poorly, and Monica was upset, and so were all the others, and they all went on to camp. So it was me and June walking behind them, and camp was 4 or 5 miles away, and it was getting dark, and she just walked about a mile and then threw her trekking poles down and said, I'm not going anywhere. Right. And so I thinking about this is, you think about the question is, how do you motivate kids when it's,
that's
when it's a need to or a have to, or when they throw in their trekking poles and saying, you can go ahead, I don't care, leave me here, I'm not going anywhere. Right. And so it was a very significant and difficult moment. And I tried all of those. I was mirroring, I was summarizing, I was asking the right kind of questions, and she was done. She was dug in, she wouldn't go anywhere. And I didn't know what to do. And I just sat down by her, but it was getting cold and dark, and it was terrible. Well, June is my like little horse whisperer, she's like, she loves animals. We had goats and we had chickens, and she loves all the animals so much. And they really do love her. And so this hiker that we'd been passing, leapfrogging with for the section, came up to us, and I'd lied to a couple hikers that came past us. They said, how are you doing? And I said, we're fine. Well, she came up and I said, June is not having a good day. It's a really bad day. And you won't believe this. So she said, well, I don't know if you'll take this as a compliment, but I mean it that way. My favorite milk goat, my lead milk goat, is named June.
It was so
Isn't
sweet.
that the coolest thing? Like it was
awesome.
So perfect. And I'm telling you, they sat down and talked about goats for 10 minutes, and then June got up and walked 3 miles to camp. And so, I would say sometimes the motivation was well out of our hand and very much offered to us from the outside. It was very fortuitous, and that was not isolated. That happened again and again, where we would feel like I'm at the end of my rope. I got nothing to offer for here, and then all of a sudden, this sort of fresh wind of hope or
That's
something.
great. That's really great. That's really great. We have a couple more questions from our Q&A. One is, how did the hikes build your children's mental resilience, and are they better prepared to face challenges, both on and off the trail? I think you've answered that in a lot of ways, but is there something specific about resilience?
Well, yeah, I think at least I do with June, because we're doing school together, and actually it can be Georgie, it can be Henry. I just remember doing this with June recently. Just she was writing a paper, feeling really frustrated to synthesize it all together, and I can't do this, and so I just said, you always felt that way on the trail. You always felt that way, like you couldn't do it. And you made all three. Like it's not, you got to not believe yourself here, because it's not true.
Yeah.
So I think we can point back to it a lot for that kind of thing, for like I thought I couldn't, it felt like I couldn't, it felt impossible, but I got through it and it wasn't. So yeah, I think it gives you, it gives something to point to. And even on the trail, I think we did that, we felt that way, last week when we had such a hard day, and we got through that. We got to the end of the day. We're going to get to the end of this day, and we're going to get to rest. And,
Yeah. This is what a 2,500 foot climb feels like. And 1,200 feet into it, this is what it feels like. It feels like this every time. You always want to give up right here. I do too. So this is where, so there is a recognition of that kind of thing. I was thinking of Georgie when we first started the hike. She was 11. The first hike, she was 11, and she would fall apart every day. And we started calling. She'd cry while we walked, but we had to walk, so she just walked and cried. And we would call it Cry 30. And because we essentially just launched out of the wilderness, and we had to make 90 miles before we could get to food, and we'd never done that before. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. We have to use the hours of light that are in the day, and we don't have time, not in a nasty way, we don't have time to sit and cry. Like, it's a terrible thing to have to say to an 11-year-old. But so we called it Cry 30, and developed into a pattern for a good long while, and then it started to drop away. Well, we finished the Sierra. We're about 1,900 miles into the trip, and we launch out into the next section. It's 130 miles, and they're long water carries, so it's heavier. There's some hill climbs that are similar and reminding us to the Sierra Nevada, and we thought we were done with the hard stuff. So it's hard again, and we're just like, oh, this is terrible. Like, and Aiden got sick, and so Georgie starts walking up a hill, and she just starts bawling, and she said, I can't do it, Dad. I can't do it again. And then after she finished that cry, we started walking, and she started to feel bad again, and she stopped again, and she said, Dad, I have a question, and this is my 11-year-old. What do you do when you see the despair coming on?
Oh my God.
Can you believe that?
No.
And I was like, Monica, this is why we came. I don't have an answer for you, Georgie, but this is why we came. But there is a sense in which there's a sense in which I think my kids have that gear, or that recognition, or that memory where they look backward and they can say, I remember this feeling. I know this feeling. I know what it is, and it's a lie. And I will be over the other side of this at some point. But it feels real every time. But I think they have a better recognition and hope of overcoming those kinds of things in the physical realm, but also I would say it translates into the mental as well.
Wow, that's really good. Have you, this is another question that came from the Q&A. Have you thought about how your family would be different if you did not go on these hikes, on these long distance through hikes? How it would be different? What would be different?
I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, but I will. I mean, I think we have a pretty significant bond. I mean, that I don't think would be there as much. I'm sure we would just be doing normal life, and we would be bonded. But I think having shared those intense experiences together has created something bonding.
Yeah, I think my kids make fun of me more as
Yeah.
a result. Like I think they treat me like I've been trying to write some of this experience and think this would be fun to leave for them as markers to remember or whatever. And so I was reading one section to Henry the other day, and I finished, and he like he goes he goes I don't know, like it was later on, it was probably the next day or something. He's like, well, Dad, I don't know. I mean, you're just going to use me as a prop for your, prop in your book to show your good parenting.
Oh my God.
And we did this one. We did on our Appalachian Trail. We did a YouTube daily videos, and we just sort of video captured the us eating, and we would throw out topics, and everybody would talk. Well, one day we were particularly like angry. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to ask any questions. I didn't want to be a part of it or whatever. And so I was snippy and upset or whatever. And Georgie finishes it. Georgie, like at the end, it's clearly been a bad session or whatever. And Georgie at the end, I can remember watching it back, and Georgie makes this like sort of snide comment where she looks at the camera. She goes, Georgie, oh yeah, she looks up at the camera and she goes, we're gonna call this passive aggressive lunch. What do you think, Dad? Or something like that.
It's got some great ones.
Yeah.
It was so funny. I would say that. I would say
that. We could probably have hidden our own stuff, let's call it, a little more if we hadn't gone on. I mean, I feel like they've seen a lot of, our weaknesses and our breaking points, I'll say. Yeah, I think we would have been able to hide it a little bit better from them. I mean, not necessarily intentionally, but yeah, I just feel like they got to see a lot.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. Like I think that's what I was trying to say earlier. Maybe is like if you're a soccer parent, or if you're a sports parent or whatever, you sit on the sideline and you've eaten 7,000 cheeseburgers that week, and you couldn't run to your mailbox without passing out, but you sit on the sideline and talk
We
to your
are
kid
soccer parents, by the way.
Oh, right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I'm making fun of myself here. But you sit on the sideline and you say, you critique your kids like you played in the World Cup, like you don't have like you talk at your kids, or you talk down to your kids, or all that stuff. I'm not saying that there's not like some, like I say this to them all the time. I say, you don't obey my authority because I'm right. You obey me because I'm an authority, and that's a muscle that is good for you to get good at using, not because I'm good at leading. Like it's because it's good for you to learn this, like do this. And so but that's what I would say to Monica's point. And I was thinking about this earlier, that is really cool, is that it does put you in a place where you don't get to be the one that's talking at them about how great they ought to be doing. You actually are in it with them, and you feel vulnerable, you feel exposed, you feel nervous, you feel tired, and you're also having to work all that out right in front of them. And they get to see you do it well, and they get to see you do it poorly. And you get to grow together. And so I do think there's a sense in which there's sort of like, I told Monica when we got back this last time, I said, I think I'm done parenting. Like, I think my kids have had more of me than any parent will ever have with their kid. And if I haven't offered it to them yet, I don't really have it to offer. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not going to get better. Let's find mentors for them that are doing things better than me. A lot better.
I had to say, I think we have a little bit more to do. We have a 14-year-old.
Yeah. Well, you've given them an amazing, all four of them, just an amazing experience. The whole thing is just, it's just really commendable. I think it's great. Personally, I just think it's awesome. And we're coming up on the hour, but I do have one more question. So you're not on the trail now. How do you retain the sense of peace and tranquility in your busy real world life? Like, what do you do? Yeah. What do you bring back from the trail?
Because it is tough transitioning back. For me, just the time outdoors really does affect my mood. And I notice a lot that I'm thinking, I've been inside all day. Like, I need to walk outside, get some sunshine. And I have to exercise. I just have to get some exercise for my mood. So, and you just have to take care of myself a little bit to not go not get, I don't know, it feels like a frequency. It gets too high.
Right.
So to come down a little bit from that.
Yeah. Yeah, I have noticed that for me. I noticed that I probably transitioned most poorly of all of our family, like, because I think I like it more than they do. But I have noticed that it helps me to walk every day. Like if I walk somewhere, it does help. I would say that's a need that I did not know that I had, and it does help me quite a lot, and I like it better than I thought that I would like it. And I'm hesitant to say this one because I've been reading a lot about narcissism. I need a grandiose vision. I like mission and purpose, and having vocation, or what I do tie into something that feels grand and worthy. And I actually don't think that's narcissism. I think that's a very human thing, and I think it's a uniquely human thing. And I do think that I need that more than I knew. And so tripping along to the next thing doesn't sound good to me. Like moving toward a Mexico or a Canada or something that sort of sits out there is really helpful and infuses life with some purpose and value. And so the search, I don't want to be involved in an endless search and avoid the necessities of life, but I do think that finding something that has purpose and value and is significant is a good thing, and it is something that I would say the recognition of that could have probably remained dormant if we hadn't gone, and so I'm glad for that.
That's great. Do you have another grandiose? I'm asking another question. I see I could ask you a million questions. Do you have another grandiose idea in mind for are you keeping that under wraps, or do you?
Yeah, that's right. No, yeah. There's going to be a big reveal. Like that would require that I get good at this. I want to write a book. I want to write the story of this experience. Not as I don't want to write it well, and I want to write it to, like I said, to lay down some remembrances for the kid of what they accomplished, what they did, and have it be as true to essence as it can possibly be. Now, it's been really good for me because working toward it's very revelatory when you try to describe a thing and then you remember back and you think, wow, it was not all that good. I wasn't as good as I thought. There are some difficulties relationally that I understand and see that are sort of nuanced within my relationships with my kids. And I think, you know what, I built that on the trail by using words that were not whole, like they weren't true. And my kids aren't dumb. They can pick up on it. When you say, you're doing great, kid, I think you can make it, and you're lying, they can tell, and I didn't mean it. And I also was, there's a way I could have joined better in her frustration in those moments, and sort of reflecting on that has been a value. The answer is yes, I want to try to write a book. The answer is I would like to, I think we want to walk again. Do we want to walk again?
I would love to walk again. Yes. I have a grandiose vision of graduating kids from high school. So.
And then maybe walking again.
And then maybe walking again. Yes.
They
I love it. Yeah.
They've been told that their future participation is completely and entirely optional. They can come or not.
They're welcome to join.
It was part of the negotiation for the Triple Crown, and honestly, they all did it for me. Like, it was really, it was very, and they recognized that they were doing that, and they let me know on occasion that they recognized that. But it was really, it was a good gift from them. None of them wanted to do it, but they all did it and were willing. And Aiden is off at college now, and she did say on her return, she got back last night. She did say, I can see how good it was that we did that. Like, now that I'm off at college and I'm interacting with other kids my age, I can see that there are things that happened because of that trip that were really good. So that's exciting.
That's very exciting. That that's quite a compliment and a gift that you've given them. And that's really awesome that she recognizes that. And,
Mhm.
you know, and I remember Monica at the beginning of our time together, you talking about, you know, you don't have them for very, very long. So, you know, it's nice that you were able to spend that time and that Aiden recognizes it as she's now off in college, how important it was. That's great. That's really great. I could talk to you guys forever. It's just, you're so interesting. This whole thing is just fascinating to me. I love to hike, but I doubt I'll be doing the Triple Crown, but I do love hiking. So I did, but it's just been really wonderful to meet you and talk with you and spend this hour with you learning about, you know, your time with your kids out on the trail. It's really been great. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having us. It was great. It was very fun to talk to you, Jenny.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.